What's up guys, Intelitech Studios here, and today we're going to be doing the full review of the Samsung Galaxy J7 Sky Pro. Now this review can also apply to the Galaxy J3 Luna Pro, which is identical to this device, only it's a little bit smaller. Basically, if this is essentially the same screen size as the Galaxy S7 Edge, and the J3 Luna Pro is exactly the same phone, but it's the size of the standard Galaxy S7. Now, I don't really have any way to compare that because literally all the phones that I have are phablet-sized devices with a 5.5-inch screen or larger, but this phone is still a really good phone, whether you get the smaller version, the J3 Luna Pro, or the bigger version, the J7 Sky Pro. I've owned both. This is my first J7 Sky Pro. All the other ones were Luna Pros. I owned about 3 or 4 of them over the years. So this is basically just a comprehensive view of all of them. I don't have the Lunas anymore because I don't like devices that small, but this review applies to that just as well because the only difference is the screen, price, and battery. So this device, if you're wondering, the J7 Sky Pro features a 5.5-inch HD screen that's at 1280 by 720 and not full HD, no OLED, it is an LCD screen. But you have a plastic build, which is actually surprisingly nice. You have a 3300 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty impressive considering that's the same size as in my daily driver Galaxy Note 8. So between the two, you're actually getting the same size battery. And while you don't have wireless charging and you don't have the option, unlike the Galaxy Note 4, to actually put a little card inside the back cover to make it wirelessly charge, you can't do that with this phone. But you, just like the iPhones or a phone with a metal back, you can get one that plugs into the charging port and does that. And you can still do wireless charging. And of course, the main advantage is that it is removable. So you just pop the back cover off, just like the legacy Galaxy devices, and there is your 3300 milliamp hour battery. As you can see, it's a surprisingly decent size, and it actually has surprisingly good battery life. Now, granted, this is a cheaper phone, so you'd kind of expect that if it has a decent battery in it, but the battery life on this is really, really good. I haven't used it enough to get a full screen-on time measurement, but if I had to guesstimate, I would probably get around anywhere from 4.5 to 5 hours of screen on time, identical to my Note 5, Note 8, all that kind of stuff. And that's on the low end. On the high end, this can get even more because, again, it has those low power internals. So if you're worried about battery life, don't. The battery life on this is really good. Pretty much just as good as the Note 8, if not a little bit better. So battery on this is really good. And of course, as you saw, you also have the option to put a micro SD card in here, just like the newer Galaxy devices and unlike the Galaxy S6 and Note 5 series, as well as other devices like the OnePlus 3 or the iPhone 6 Plus. So you can add more storage to this, and that is very important because this has 16 gigs of internal storage. I do not believe there is a higher tier storage version, at least I have not found one. So 16 gigs is all you have. Granted, there are some other phones that are also available with that same amount of storage, but keep in mind, this is expandable. So yes, it's only 16 gigs, but if you can get around having a lot of your files and stuff, like your music, your photos, your videos on an SD card, then you're good to go. You can expand the memory to get a decent amount. I don't know what the maximum storage capacity is, but I do know that you can expand it to at least, I believe, 64 gigs. In fact, you know what I just realized? Actually, I'm going to be right back, because you know what? I actually haven't tried a large capacity SD card, and I have a large capacity SD card in my Note 8, so why don't we live on film see if a 128 gig card will actually work in this? No better way to do it than live. So let's pop this back cover off. There's the SD card slot and the SIM card slot. Another good advantage is that these phones are usually branded track phone. Whenever you boot it up, it says track phone, but these phones are completely unlocked, meaning they have the bands for CDMA and GSM. So if you have Verizon, if you have Straight Talk, if you have Sprint, if you have AT&T, T-Mobile, Boost, Metro, Cricket, whatever, there's probably more, US Cellular, doesn't matter. You can pretty much use this phone with your service no matter what it is. So that's also really good. So you don't need to worry about your carrier, unlike there are certain phones that are only GSM, a lot of phones that are only GSM. since the US is one of the only few countries that uses CDMA carriers. So you will be good with this phone. So you shouldn't have to worry about your carrier. You should be able to get this phone, pop your SIM card in, and have it work. So let's grab the Note 8. There's the Note 8, and let's grab the SD card out of it. I have a large capacity 120 gig SD card in there. There it is. So there's that card. This is a 128 EVO from Samsung. So we're going to pop this out, and we're actually going to see if this will work with this J7 Sky Pro. So pop that card in, pop on the back cover, and let's see if this works. And yes, it does. So if we actually look in the storage, this does recognize SD cards, at least this one, this Samsung one, up to 128 gigs. At least it looks like it's seeing it. Dang it, where's the storage? There it is. So, storage. And as we can see, the system data has 11 out of 16 gigs. But then if we go to the SD card, 119.2 gigs. So you can actually expand this at least with an SD card of at least 128 gigabytes or 120 gigabytes. So if you need more storage, you can get a huge capacity SD card, especially for the price. I believe I only paid like 20 or 30 bucks for that SD card. I believe I paid 30 bucks for it. I could be wrong on that, but it was something like that. And you can expand the memory in this phone, or the storage, excuse me, and get a lot of storage in this device. So if you're worried about storage and you can have your data on an SD card, then you're good to go. So you have plenty of options on that front. So we also have micro USB on the bottom for charging. No fast charging. You have a standard charging adapter in the box. It does not work with Samsung fast charging, but considering the low powered specs, it does charge at a decently fast rate. So if you're worried about the speed of charging, you'll be okay. It's obviously not as fast as the fast charging on newer Galaxy devices like the Note 8, but you do have plenty fast charging. So yeah, and also you have a camera right there. I believe it's an 8 megapixel camera if I'm remembering correctly, and the camera is pretty alright. It's, for the price, I mean obviously this is a cheap phone. You do have the double click shortcut to get to the camera. There we go. So you do have the double click shortcut to get to the camera, just like when it was introduced on the flagship Galaxy devices like the Note 7. So you have plenty of ways to get into the camera super fast, so you're not going to miss those Kodak moments. So, and again, you have a bunch of camera modes and crap, that's all nice and dandy. And you have the camera, and it's a decent camera. Like I said, it's obviously not going to be good when you compare it to, or it's not going to be the best when you compare it to something like, I don't know, even like the Galaxy S7. Because this phone came out in early 2017, so this would have been competing with the most flagship device at the time, which was the Galaxy Note 7, and obviously comparing the cameras on these two is night and day, considering that one costs, $850 and one costs, $100. So pretty big difference in terms of what you have regarding camera quality. However, if you're not like a super professional photographer and you just want a camera to get the job done, this one will definitely get the job done. If you're a person who wants a super high-end camera, don't expect that for the price. That goes without saying. But it does get the job done. If we have a subject, let's take a picture of the OnePlus 3. So we're going to focus on that and just quickly snap that photo. Make sure we're focusing. And click. And there you go. So that's not too bad. If I look at the photo, it is a little bit blurry, just a little bit, but it gets the job done. You can see, it's pretty alright. Again, for the price, not bad. Now there's plenty of improvements you can get in camera by just jumping up a couple of dollars, but if you're not concerned about that, the camera quality on this is really good. Next, we'll super quickly cover the build quality, which is surprisingly good. We do have glass on the front. We have Gorilla Glass. This is not the newest Gorilla Glass 5 that we have in newer devices, or Gorilla Glass 6, or even the Dragon Trail glass that you see on the Pixel 3a and 3a XL. But it is still Gorilla Glass, just an older version, and it will keep the phone from getting scratched pretty alright, although not as good as Gorilla Glass 5. It's also not as break resistant as Gorilla Glass 5. It does have 2D glass, so the glass does curve over the edges just slightly. So I would be careful if you're going to use this phone without a case, because my J3 Luna Pro, the smaller version, I've cracked, I think, 2 of those. Granted, they were from very high falls that probably would have killed one of the flagships as well, but just be careful, because the plastic body of this is really durable, and this is really solid. If you drop it on anything but the screen, it will be very good. It's very grippy. It's a very nice grippy material. It feels solid. It doesn't feel like it's creaking. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. The build quality is very good. Even if you personally don't like the build materials, because that's a difference I try to make when making the distinction between the build of a phone. There's 3 things that you need to take into consideration: the build materials, the build quality, and the durability. Because even if you don't personally like plastic phones, you should at least concede the fact that there are some plastic phones that are very solid, and this is one of them. Even if you may prefer the metal and glass designs of other phones, both of these phones are built very well. Now, I would still maintain that the flagships are built a little bit better since they're a little bit more sturdy. However, for a plastic phone, the build quality on this is really good. So next, with the J7 Sky Pro, we're going to be testing out the quality of the audio and the screen. Now, like I mentioned, the screen's already really good, but as far as the speaker goes, it has one single firing speaker right there. There is no dual speakers by any stretch of the imagination, so give up on wanting that. You will not get it with this phone. You don't even get it with this phone. So what makes you think you'd get it with this phone? I digress. So, as far as we playing a video, let's go ahead and play some audio and see how well this actually sounds. Of course, this is going through the speakers on my Note FE that I'm filming with. And you guys just saw my unboxing of the original Galaxy Note. Now here's an unboxing of a very special Galaxy Note that a lot of you guys probably have never used before for maybe a certain reason. There's a certain reason why a lot of people don't really see this phone anymore, but we'll get into that later. But anyway, guys, this is the Samsung Galaxy Note 7. This is the legendary device that succeeded the Note 5 and precedented the Note 8, and was also susceptible to a certain flaw. Anyways, and I actually have 2 here. I have the AT&T silver unit and a black. As you can tell, the audio quality on this isn't horrible, but you can tell it's very tinny whenever it gets loud. It's not all that good of a speaker. It just overall isn't the best experience. However, of course it does have Bluetooth. It doesn't have Bluetooth 5.0 like on the newer devices, but it does have Bluetooth, so obviously you can connect it to a Bluetooth speaker, and of course it has a headphone jack. Headphone jack. Apple, pay attention. Headphone jack. 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 And now if we compare the speaker on this to a device that was released around the same time but was a much flagship phone, that's a term that I'm saying, flagship. These are dummy phones. These aren't the original functioning units. These are just display models that don't work. But this is different. So let's slide this box up. So this is the same video. Open this up. Now the phone will try to fall, and it did, but that's okay. So there it is. A lot of people will give the speakers on the older Galaxy phones, kind of weird calling this an older Galaxy phone, but a lot of people will give the speaker on the older Galaxy phones crap because they're single firing, as opposed to the newer S9, Note 9, S10 speakers that are obviously backed up by the earpiece. I don't know why it took Samsung so long to do that, but either way, a lot of people complain about these speakers, rightfully so, but when you listen to it compared to one of these phones, it's night and day. Like, again, just to recap, if I open up both of these and I play this, full volume, this is full volume, that's at 51 seconds. The Sprint or T-Mobile, except these are dummy phones. These aren't the original functioning units, these are just display models. And then now with this one, functioning units, these are just display models that don't work. But this is different. You can tell there's a huge difference with the quality of the audio. Even if it's still single firing, the quality of the audio is way better on obviously a flagship device. And the Galaxy Note 7, or at the very least the Galaxy Note Fan Edition, you can actually get for a really good price now. I got this exact Note FE. Oh my god. People are calling me. Ah. Next, we're going to cover the audio quality through the J7 Sky Pro. And, I mean, is there really any discussion to be made here? It's a phone. It makes phone calls. The phone calls sound fine. I've made a few phone calls on this. It's okay. It gets the job done. It's a phone. It can make phone calls. Sounded perfectly fine on both ends. No complaints. I didn't use it with the actual service, but I did use it with Messenger and Discord, and it worked just fine. So, no complaints on the voice front. And finally, next we have to discuss the software. And we don't have to, but we can. Now, if you're familiar with a certain other device that came out around the same time, the Galaxy Note 7, the software between these two devices is very, very similar. In both cases, we have Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow based on Samsung's Grace UX user interface, which later became known as Samsung Experience all the way through Android Oreo. Now, if you get a newer version of the J7 Sky Pro or the J3 Luna Pro, you actually get newer software. A lot of newer versions of these phones actually have Android Nougat or Android Oreo on them. There might even be some ones coming up with Android Pie, who knows? So, if you are worried about the software, you can always get one of the newer versions that have a newer version of Android. In addition, those versions will also have a fingerprint sensor, which is really the last complaint that I have, is that, again, there's no fingerprint sensor, so you have to rely on a pattern, PIN, passcode, all the usual kind of things that you had to rely with on earlier devices. But if you don't mind that, if you don't use your phone all that often, or you don't mind putting in a pattern or something like that, then it's perfectly fine. And if you are concerned about things like the storage, the software, or the fingerprint sensor, which are really my biggest complaints, you do have newer versions of this device that actually address those issues. This one's just simply the cheapest that you're pretty much going to find, at least in this family. Now, there are even earlier versions that are even cheaper, but those just aren't as common. This phone, the J3 Luna Pro and the J7 Sky Pro, are extremely common, so you will find these things all over the place. You're not going to have to worry about availability like with certain other devices like the Note FE and the Note 7, or even devices like the OnePlus 3, where you're not going to be able to find them very often. It's very similar to something like an iPhone 6 Plus, where you can find these pretty much anywhere. Generally, there are newer versions that you might see and might want to consider over these, but they're very similar. And they're even at fairly similar price points. They have similar screen sizes, and overall, kind of similar phones. iPhone 6 Plus is built better, but honestly, I prefer the design of the J3 and the J7 because I like the plastic. I don't like the plastic buttons. I do like metal buttons, but I don't mind a plastic frame, especially since this one has that rubbery, kind of grippy plastic that I mentioned earlier. It's very nice to hold, even if it doesn't feel the utmost premium. It's also nice because whenever you're outside on a cold day and you're holding the phone, you don't have to worry about the actual phone getting really cold or really hot because of the materials. So that is something to consider. It's very good. So if you don't like not having a fingerprint sensor, then you might not want to get this phone. But if that's something you can live with, then that's probably the biggest thing as far as a creature comfort that you can hope for that newer devices have that this does not. That and the fact that it has 16 gigs of storage, but like we mentioned earlier, the SD card pretty much solves that problem depending on what type of user you are. So that's pretty much it. There's not really much else I have to say regarding the J7 Sky Pro. It's still a great phone, even though I personally would obviously prefer to use higher end devices that have a lot better features. I could live with this, and you probably could too, because it's still a decently fast phone, and it's still something that a lot of people can live with. Now, going back into the software, yes, you have Android Marshmallow, but you still have all your basic features. You still have your wallpapers and themes. You still have a lot of your options regarding, come on, go back. You still have a lot of your basic toggles. You have Bluetooth, you have all that kind of stuff. You don't have NFC. So that is one thing. If you need NFC, then skip this because you do not have NFC. But you have Bluetooth, you have Wi-Fi, you have a flashlight, you have data. You do have power saving modes if your battery does not do as well. You also have secure folder, so that's also an option for extra security. And you have plenty of all the basic stuff. You don't have your always on display, you don't have a Bluetooth S Pen, you don't have any of that kind of fancy stuff, but all the essentials are still here. So if you care about just the fundamentals, then this is a fantastic device for you. So, in conclusion, the Galaxy J7 Sky Pro and the Galaxy J3 Luna Pro are still great devices. I usually don't talk about prices in my reviews because prices fluctuate all the time. Someone in my Note Edge review actually asked, hey, why don't you talk about the prices? And that's why, because they change all the time. However, I managed to get this for around, I believe I paid $55 for it, and you can get these for anywhere from like 40 to like $80 depending on where you look. And if you want them brand new, they're usually about 90. I don't know if I'd pay the brand new price. I don't know if I'd pay $90 for this or anything like that, but honestly, for 60, it's a really good phone. For 70, yeah, not bad. It's definitely a very decent phone. Now granted, if you go just a little bit above that, you can get phones that are much better. So if you can stretch a higher price, I'd say do it. But if not, and you just want something basic, this will get the job done, and it is a very solid phone. Even if you compare it to a budget device like the OnePlus 3, this will obviously wipe the floor with this phone. However, this phone is also a little bit more expensive, pretty much about twice as expensive. So for the price of two of these, you could pretty much get one of these. And for the price of like, I don't know, 3 of these, you could get one of these. And for the price of about 4 of these, you could get one of these. You get the idea. Actually, not 4 of these. For like 8 of these, you could get one of these. And anyways, this is the Galaxy J7 Sky Pro full review from Intelitech Studios. I do recommend this device, especially if you can get a good deal on it. It's definitely one that you should consider. It's a great device. Not my favorite, obviously, because I have so many better phones, but it's still one that you can definitely get by with. And if you want a nice budget phone that has a big screen, a decent screen, good overall build, basic stuff, a decent camera that's serviceable, a little bit of storage, a little bit of RAM, that kind of thing, this is right up your alley. So if you're looking for a budget phone and you want a bigger one, this is definitely one that I would consider. If you want a little bit more features, check out one of the newer versions of these, or like I said, check out a different device like the OnePlus 3. But if you like Samsung and you like budget devices, this is probably the best value that I can think of regarding the budget market, because this gives you a lot of phone for a very little bit of price. Believe me, if you're a basic user, do not buy one of these phones. You don't need it. I know so many people who barely just check emails and watch videos on their phone, and they'll get something like this every 2 years. You don't need that. You can get something like this and save a pretty penny. Now, am I saying don't get this if you want it? Of course not. If you want to treat yourself, go ahead. This is obviously a much better device. But if you don't need that and you are worried about spending a lot of money on a phone, then this phone will save you. So overall, very, very solid phone, and one that I can definitely recommend to a lot of people. In fact, I will likely be selling this phone to a good friend of mine after this video, since his iPhone 5S is completely destroyed and missing the home button. So this will definitely go to a good home, and it will be well loved and appreciated. Anyway guys, this was the full review of the J7 Sky Pro and the J3 Luna Pro. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know a lot of you guys are on a budget trying to find a new phone. Hopefully this video helps out a whole lot with you guys. Anyway guys, this is Intellitech Studios signing out. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I've said that a billion times already, but you get the idea. And also, as soon as I post this video, I will be dropping a poll on what device should I review next. I've got about 1,000 devices that I could potentially review, and many of these devices are up for review. So, as soon as I drop this video, I will be dropping a poll on my channel, and you can join the poll and decide what device you want to be reviewed next. Anyway guys, this is Intellitech Studios signing out. I will see you guys in the next video. Let me know what you think about this phone and its smaller predecessor and other related devices in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.